The following program is produced by Marshfield Community Television.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Council Preview. I'm your host, Mike Warren from WDLB Radio. We are getting ready for another meeting of the Marshfield Common Council. It is on Tuesday. The date is November 10th at 7 p.m. as always at City Hall Plaza. Here to preview the meeting and a few agenda items, our City Administrator Steve Barg back with us once again for another program. And Steve, welcome back to Council Preview.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. And I do wish the weather we're having as we tape this right now would go on all winter long.
Bottle it up and bring it out on a cold winter day.
That would be great.
That would be nice. We've had a nice start to the month of November.
Yep.
Well, let's hope the weather is nice on Tuesday so everyone goes down to City Hall Plaza for the council meeting.
That would be good too.
All right. Well, the forecast for inside is very nice. So come on and join us at City Hall. A couple of things that we're looking at from the meeting on Tuesday that we wanted to highlight here. And I guess the big headline lately is the fact that we might be going to a different location for these council meetings in the not too distant future, maybe, I don't know, a couple of years, a year to 2 years, something like that. There has been talk about putting City Hall Plaza on the market and selling it and having the government operations for the city of Marshfield move, well, essentially next door to a building that is currently on the market. I guess maybe let's start with some background. Bring us up to speed on that and then kind of give us the very latest on what this possible move for the city government operations might be.
Sure, Mike. Well, I've been here almost 5 years, and the moment I got here, I became aware of the fact that the building we occupy now is not really designed as a city hall. It was designed as a medical office building, which is what it was for many years. And so you have, again, people on different floors. I'm on the 7th floor, engineering's on the 6th floor, finance on the 5th floor, park and recreation on the 2nd floor. And that causes some concerns and issues that we deal with on a regular basis. But the thought is, you know, with the fire station having been built a few years ago and now a library going up, you know, would the city really look at trying to build a new city hall anytime soon, given the debt that's involved with these kind of projects? But we would like to find another home if possible, because right now we occupy only about a third of the 75,000 square feet over there. You know, the county offices are on the 4th floor, but they're moving soon. They're relocating most of their activity out to Norwood. The 3rd floor has, you know, a few things, but not us. You know, the 1st level obviously has some retail, which is good, Hefco Floral, insurance, other services, but the city doesn't really need much of the space. So we became aware of the Forward Financial building at 6th and Chestnut becoming available, and honestly, that is very close to the square footage that we would need, right around, I think, 27,000 square feet. And that's on the market, as you said. They're hoping to build on the north end of town. So we looked at it, and it brought this whole thing together to say, let's do a request for proposals, see if somebody would want to buy and renovate City Hall, most likely into residential or a mixed use. And if we could get enough of a purchase price out of that to make it work to sell the current building and purchase Forward Financial. But one of the pieces that we're going to talk about here in just a minute on the agenda is doing a survey, doing a study to find out what would have to be done to the Forward building to make it usable as a city hall.
So basically, spending money to see if, okay, would it work? How feasible is this? Is this actually a building we could utilize as City Hall Plaza, well, I mean, you'd have to have the council meetings there and everything, right? Yeah,
correct. And I think that's possible on the lower level from what I've seen. You know, not maybe perfectly ideal, but then you go to our meetings now and with the pillars and the configuration, it's not ideal today either. I think the biggest issue is really what would it look like? And we're going to work with Zimmerman, hopefully, and craft sort of a look of what we would have to do to make it work. So when you walk into the building, how do you know where to go? You know, is there a central starting point you go to and then someone gives you information? Or do we do it in a circular fashion, kind of half circle, to where you can go to any of the departments at a front counter? What would that cost? Trying to see what the renovation expense would be, because quite frankly, Mike, the appetite for a lot of additional debt is not there at City Hall right now. So the key is when you take the purchase price of Forward, whatever we can negotiate, plus the renovation cost, minus the sale price of the City Hall, how close to revenue neutral can we make that? The farther away it is from revenue neutral, the less likely this is ever going to happen.
The actual agenda item is, I guess you're asking to spend $15,000 for the evaluation of the forward financial building now. I look at the breakdown of what they would do. I guess they would essentially do, like we said, two things. They would evaluate the forward financial building. In other words, to say, could it be used as a city hall? And B, and then I notice there's another part to actually basically review the building itself. Is it structurally sound and all that sort of stuff? Is that, I mean, there's kind of a couple of things built into this service that they would be doing?
Correct. And the first part is what we talk about the most, the configuration and the layout to make it a usable, functional City Hall. But you're right about the other one. One of the things we trumpet a lot at City Hall these days, Mike, is the fact that we're facing a lot more maintenance costs for the current building in the next 10 years. We're looking at roughly $750,000 in the next 5 years, $2.5 million almost in the next 10 years total. So that's great. If we leave there, then we don't have to do some of those projects. But on the other hand, what are we taking on? You know, do they have issues of roofing, electrical, plumbing, those kind of things that we'll be facing as well? We need to factor those anticipated costs into this equation as well.
Yeah, because I mean, that building is not that old.
No, and I think I should know how old it is. I don't have that at my fingertips here, but it's a lot.
I mean, it can't be more than 15 years old.
Yeah, it's a lot newer of a building than City Hall, which was built, 5 decades ago or something like that.
Right.
So, and again, an older building doesn't mean it's not a good building, but the reality is that this has never been designed as a City Hall, and that does pose some problems. Even trying to guide the public. You try and tell somebody you need to go down to the 5th floor and talk to Deb Hall, then you need to go to the 2nd floor and talk to Amy Beauchamp, and then you need to come back to the 6th floor and talk to Dan Connect. I mean, you can do it, but it's not very good. It's not ideal, certainly.
All right, so that's on the agenda. One other thing, speaking of building projects on the agenda, transferring $53,530 from the Wildwood Zoo Bear Exhibit Project to the Hackman Storage Building Project. The bear exhibit has been getting a lot of attention, funded largely through private donations. There was some city money involved. And so what is this item about having to do with the bear exhibit project at Wildwood?
Well, first of all, to clarify, the city money involved in that project was only room tax money. So it wasn't actually tax levy. It was dollars that come in when people have stayed at our lodging facilities. And the vast majority, as you said, Mike, was through private fundraising. More than 90% came from that effort. And we are getting some nice applause for that. And one more thing before we get into this item is we've adjusted the hours as a result. Our hours this time of year on weekends have been cut back. But so many people want to go out there and see this exhibit that we've extended the hours later into the afternoon for that very reason. So we're very thrilled to see the early response.
Okay.
As far as this item, in order to get it done last year, things were getting this year I should say, a little bit frayed. Would we have enough money to do all the things necessary to make this the kind of exhibit that you see? And as a result, we were looking at the storage building that they've wanted to have out there for a while for some of the zoo equipment and materials, putting that off a little while. And we transferred some money, roughly $50,000, from the fund that we put aside for that to get the bear exhibit done. Well, it turned out at the end, we actually had some good things happen, some additional revenue and whatnot, and we were able to do the zoo bear exhibit without needing those monies. So we want to transfer those. It's an accounting entry, but we want to transfer those monies back to the storage building project with the idea that we can probably get that done now in 2016. And that's not nearly as exciting a project as the bear exhibit. People don't go out to see your new storage building that has zoo equipment in it, but it will be really helpful to get that stuff in a place where it's where it works best, it's out of the elements, and it's a good facility.
Well, and so they raised enough for the bear exhibit, again, like you said, so this money can go back to what it was initially intended for, right?
Right. This community is very generous. I know at any given time there's a lot of fundraisers going on. There's fundraisers going on now for UW, for the STEM building. The YMCA has kicked off their big project. But we found with both the library and community center and the bear exhibit that people have been very generous. They want to see those kind of city improvements go forward.
Well, so that leads me into another question. Did they raise enough to maintain the bear exhibit? In other words, because that's going to be added now, that's a new cost. You got to maintain this new exhibit. Did they raise any money in that regard to sort of, for the ongoing upkeep?
Yeah, there may be a little extra that we can put into that. Again, though, that's going to become part of the city budget going forward, and it'll be in with the regular zoo annual budget. But any monies that are left over, you know, certainly can be put into that account, I would believe, for
Yeah.
future maintenance.
So I mean, it's not just the room tax money that we mentioned.
No.
It's now an ongoing expense. It's a new line item within the city budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I'd like to add too that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is making a push to really play up the bear exhibit in this broader area to get people to come. I mean, I think even I downplayed at first. You hear that we have 2 Kodiak bears, and okay, that's great. But then you find out how uncommon that is and how few zoos have Kodiak bears. And this is a good drawing card for the zoo, first of all, but then our community as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe, and if it keeps bringing in visitors, maybe that room tax money, it could, you know, go into the upkeep or to help offset the cost of the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of that facility. Who knows?
Very possible, or at least continuing to market it so that some of those expenses to draw people are covered that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right, one other agenda item I see on here has to do with an update of permit and application fees. That sounds fun.
Yeah,
And this is actually, this could be good news for, you know, the citizens of Marshfield, right? Is this, are you looking at streamlining?
Yeah.
It's not going to get cheaper, I'm
No,
imagining, but
no.
easier?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's funny though. You come off 2 topics like moving City Hall and you know, doing a beautiful bear exhibit.
Yeah.
And now let's talk about fees and permits. But what we found for years is people have to look in various parts of the city code to find these fees. So it's all online. That's great. But okay, now I need to do a building project. Well, the building inspection fees are in chapter whatever, and I'll have to apply for a zoning permit with Josh Miller or somebody at City Hall. That's going to be in chapter whatever. And you're just bouncing around, and you wonder if it's all been kept up. Then maybe you find out that, well, no, it hasn't gotten updated in the code, but the council approved an increased fee last month. What we're trying to do, Mike, is to get them all in one place. Sort of picture the menu at a restaurant, so that you've got on 2 or 3 sheets, you've got building permits, zoning permits, all these kind of development costs. Eventually, maybe branched off to include other departments, but all in one place. Now, the best thing for the citizens is one-stop shopping. We can point them to a schedule that's online that says, here are the fees for anything that you might be looking at doing. Great, I get it in 5 minutes without calling 100 people. But secondly, for City Hall itself, it's much easier to update it. Every year we'll review these. Do they still look good? Yep. And we won't have to go back into the code and do ordinances, publishing in the newspaper, having public hearings the way we normally do. Some of that may happen, but basically, you're right, streamlining is the word.
Yeah, streamlining, but because this is, and I think we've actually talked about this before on this program, but this is really what you guys do at City Hall on a day-to-day basis. A lot of this falls under, this is what people are going to City Hall for. In, you know, by and large, this has to do with permits and, you know, people, you know, building homes and doing things like that in the city of Marshfield. A lot of times this sort of stuff is what it comes down to on a day-to-day basis, right?
It is. And to have a link like this on our website that they can just click on and see all these fees for all these different services. I mean, you know, saying it's on the web now because it's in our code, you know, somebody in Washington, D.C. can say, well, you know, that's on our website, you know, and just look under the congressional record and you'll, you know,
yeah, it's right there,
you know,
right?
It'll be right at your fingertips.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So this will be a way that they can save a lot of time and find out, okay, if I build that deck, I'll need to do this, I'll need to spend this much money on that permit, and if it's too close to the lot line, I'll have to pay this much money to have a hearing to allow that. I can just find this stuff for myself without a lot of extra time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot involved. If you look at the breakdown of it, I mean, there's different sections of code. We're talking about, well, let's see, at least 6 that I see right now. A lot of different fees, fee schedules, things like that. It can get pretty detailed, so I guess any way to streamline that or make it easier, it has to be a good thing for people dealing with this on a day-to-day basis.
It is, and I talked about residents, but probably the bigger users are contractors and developers who otherwise they have to talk to our staff for a long time to try and compute what they might pay if they're going to put up a new apartment building or something like that. They can find it pretty much at their fingertips when this is over.
All right, sounds good. All right, so those are just a few of the agenda items we have for you on Tuesday. Again, the next meeting of the Common Council is on Tuesday the 10th. As our Common Council preview program continues here in a moment, we're going to be talking about something that's not necessarily on the agenda for Tuesday, but, well, part of the ongoing discussions during this time of year having to do with a spending plan for next year in the city of Marshfield. And we'll have that discussion for you when our council preview program continues here in just a moment.
No more. This is just a big city issue.
No more. Was she drunk?
No more, she had it coming.
No more. That doesn't happen to guys.
No more. Boys will be boys.
No more excuses.
No more. I'll say something next time.
No more. That doesn't happen at my school.
No more. He said he was sorry.
No more. We are never going to fix it.
Welcome back to our council preview program. I'm your host, Mike Warren. Steve Barg, our city administrator, with us as we continue talking about the meeting of the Common Council on Tuesday. Steve, I want to get into something now that really doesn't have anything to do with the meeting on Tuesday, but some of the things we talked about on the Tuesday agenda, for instance, the bear exhibit and how it will be an added cost to the city of Marshfield going forward now. We want to bring up the recommended budget, your recommended budget for 2016. This is a spending plan that is being put together now. Maybe just first of all, let's start there. Give us the timeline going forward over the next, what is it, month or so, I think, as these budget deliberations now are sort of going on outside of, I mean, we talk about council meeting, but there's all this other stuff going on besides that.
Yeah, the council has now had 3 budget meetings, and they have sent a proposed budget, or are sending it to public hearing on November 24th. That's a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and the public is invited to come and ask questions and raise concerns. Information will be out there online. Now, I realize people say, well, information is online, but it's a $41 million budget. How do I know, you know? And one of the things I've said before in this program, Mike, is people, I think, believe they have to have all the answers. So in other words, if I want to suggest that more money is spent on the park across the street from me, well, what are you going to cut? You know, what are you going to cut? If you don't have any ideas on that, don't bother talking to us. You don't need to have the full package put together. Just let us know what you're thinking. But this year was a particularly interesting budget year, as you probably remember, Mike, from previous meetings about this expenditure restraint program. With the inflation rate being so low, the city had to cut the budget quite a bit just to qualify for that state aid payment in 2017. So this year there really wasn't a lot for the council to deliberate. But we did have some interesting conversations, and if we could cover them, I'd like that a little bit.
Yeah.
The biggest one, and this has come out in our strategic planning meetings with the council too, which are still going on, what is the city's core mission? So when we need to make cuts, you know, what are the things we have to do first and foremost? We get requests for a lot of things, and they're good. But where do we say, well, you know what, we can't add this because we'd have to cut street maintenance, or we'd have to cut, you know, park maintenance or something. Because that really is going to be the issue going forward in the next 3, 4, 5 years is what things do we want to keep in and how do we say that they tie to our core mission? Now, I'm not saying some of these ancillary things don't tie. I'm just saying that you'll see people saying, well, Up a Mansion, for example, we've given $7,500 every year to Up a Mansion, and that's a good thing. And I'm not saying we should quit doing it, but I think we need to say, okay, why do we do that? Well, it's important because ABC. We want to preserve our heritage and our history. Okay, that's a good reason to keep it. What about this that we spend $5,000 on? Does that fit into our mission? Not as much, you know. Those are going to be the conversations we're going to hear coming around the bend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the overall mission, when it comes from a budget standpoint, is, I don't know how to put it, you're not in the business of making money per se. I mean, government is supposed to be sort of a break even, or even, I don't want to say lose money, but you know what I mean? You're providing services. That's
certainly
what
not a
people
profit
expect
thing,
from
yeah.
the city.
Correct.
So, I mean, in that regard, you know, when we talk about covering things like ongoing maintenance for the bear exhibit or whatever,
right?
That's just a natural, you know, I mean, that's how it's supposed to be, I guess, right?
It does. You're right. I mean, when we provide these, we need to, you know, keep them up. How ridiculous it would be if 4 or 5 years from now you look at the bear exhibit and it's deteriorating. Or Hardacre Park. There's a good example.
Right.
You know, Paul Rogers and Rogers Cinema said, look, you know, we want a little help from you to tear down this building. If you do that, we'll make it a beautiful landscaped area with murals and benches to sit on, and it'll be great for little downtown activities and people to hang out and have a sandwich or whatever they're doing. Then they give it to us, which they've done now. We've taken possession of it. Now guess who gets to keep it up? We do. I'm not complaining about that. I'm not whining, but that's going to cost money. Are we going to pay a master gardener to do the work? Are we going to have city crews doing some of the work? That'll take them away from other jobs. You have to think about those things in future budgets. it's not just totally free.
Well, let's talk about what the budget actually is. There are different sources of revenue. I mean, people always think, okay, budget, tax dollars. You know, they need more of my money to operate, you know, what has become a bigger budget each and every year, it seems. But that's just part of the picture. That actually the tax, you know, what's covered by property taxes in the city is only like a fourth of the budget.
Of the total budget.
Of the total budget,
it's
right?
more of the general fund budget, but you know, you're right. When you take in the wastewater fees and you know, all these other things, yeah, it's not that great a percentage. There's state aid, which has been fairly flat in recent years. Again, not complaining, because I'm a state taxpayer as well. And then there's fines and fees. There's grants that we get from various agencies of government. It all comes into that pot.
Yeah. Well, and again, the overall tax bill, when you get a tax bill in the city of Marshfield, it's not just the city of Marshfield, it's the school district, it's Mid-State Technical College, it's the county, it's the state. I mean, you're just a small portion of it. I guess the bad news is that, you know, we heard that the school tax was actually going down, but increases, the Mid-State tax rate's going up. I think the city of Marshfield tax rate's going up
by 0.5%.
So I mean, overall, the budget, you know, that tax bill is going to be higher. What is the actual? I mean, where are they right now? Aren't they talking about a small increase in the city of Marshfield tax rate for next year?
Yeah, the proposal is for about 0.5%, which would take us from $9.02 per thousand to about $9.07 per thousand. So a 5-cent increase, just slightly over 0.5%. And it's the third year in a row that we would have a small tax rate increase between 1/4 and 0.5%. You know, it's really weird because people say, well, inflation isn't going up. I mean, it's been pretty flat. Why do you need more money? Well, you still have contractual obligations. Health insurance still goes up. You have police and fire contracts and other agreements that you have to abide by. So even if not every supply cost is going up, the overall picture is slowly inching up.
Yeah, well, you mentioned healthcare, and that's, I mean, we've talked about it on this program. It costs us $3 million, I think, or more than $3 million just for that health insurance for city workers.
Yeah, it does. And we've got a new HR manager coming on board, and I'm excited about that. But one of the things I'll be doing is spending a lot of time with her trying to figure out how we can hold those costs down, whether it be a greater employee wellness program, whether it be creative ways to try and structure the plans differently, more employee consumerism, trying to get the employees to be better consumers of healthcare dollars. We're instituting an HSA this year, a health savings account option for people to choose if they want. So we need to find ways to control those costs. Otherwise, they are just continuing to escalate.
Well, and I'm sure you've got to build in some pay raises, some bonuses for next year, and I mean, that's all. That money's got to come from somewhere, and yet you're talking about health insurance increases. So I mean, they're going to get a pay raise, and it's going to go right into higher health care costs. Well, essentially, is what it comes down to for most people, right?
Yeah, and you're right. And we talk about the inflation rate being fairly flat. They tell us right now it's 0.3% for the last 12 months. Well, you know, if you go to the grocery store, it doesn't seem like 0.3%. And the same is true with some of the stuff we have to buy. When we deal with asphalt companies on some of our street projects, I can tell you that the cost of that is going up more than 0.3%. I'm pretty sure it is. So even though you hear some of those things on the news, that doesn't mean that those are our true costs.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we talked about a fourth of the budget is property taxes. You mentioned a few of the other ones. Where does the money come from? Fees and things, state aid, things like that? State
aid is a big one. We get shared revenue to the tune of close to $5 million, between $4.5 and $5 million, I believe. General transportation aid, you know, connecting highway aid. That means that because Highway 10, Highway 13, you know, they run through our community. You know, the state gives us some money for those kind of things to keep those portions of the roadway up. You know, we get grants, we get fines and fees, obviously, from various. We talked about the fees a minute ago for permits. The police department obviously is responsible for fines that are raised in large part. But a lot of it is also enterprise funds, wastewater, for example. When you pay your sewer bill along with you know, your utility costs. EMS, the cost of running our ambulance. Well, there's tremendous fees that we collect for services from that. That makes up a lot of the money, and then there's obviously miscellaneous as well. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, there's user fees, licenses, permits, things like that, public charges for things. But then so then it's spent basically on services that you get. Yeah. In return for your tax dollars and for all these other fees and things.
And as we said, you know, we talked about health care, health insurance going up.
Right.
I think wages and benefits, probably I mean, people is probably the biggest cost, right?
Right, and that's where we're different than private companies. People will sometimes look at us and say, well, why are your costs going up compared to others? You know, private companies make products, and they make, you know, they make widgets or whatever. I know people say widgets. What is a widget, by the way?
I have no idea.
But, you know, in a private company, the payroll cost may be a lot lower, but for a city government, it's much higher because that's what we are. It's the building inspector who comes out to look at your project. It's the public works person who goes out in the street. We don't make anything. We don't have a factory, so our costs are much higher for personnel. So things like health insurance and wage adjustments have a greater impact on City Hall than they probably do a lot of private companies.
Well, and whatever's left goes into public safety, public works, street paving, or, you know, things like that. But parks and recreation, you know, basically police, fire, all those other things. And there's when you pay your people, there's really not much left that goes into those actual services.
No, and I think people would be pleased if they look at this document, which is online, by the way, that you're looking at, because, you know, they would see that the vast majority of money we spend, Mike, is on public safety and public works. It's police, fire, ambulance, it's street maintenance. Those are the kind of things that they're largely paying for. Yeah, we provide other services. We have a Parks and Recreation department. You know, we have other activities, but the lion's share is public safety and public works.
All right, so what's the timeline now as you prepare the spending plan? It's going to be presented to the council here in short order in a couple weeks?
The council has basically, you know, modified and embraced it at this point, but it'll go to the citizens on November 24th for approval of the tax rate and the tax levy. But I really want this to be the start of going forward to the future too, because I think that there were some concerns about, you know, again, how far we can stretch ourselves. And I think that some of these questions are going to come up. In the past, we've provided assistance for the heroin prevention project and for the pet shelter. And these are great things, and I'm glad we're supporting them. But as the community struggles with various issues, I'm sure we're going to get more requests, more things that we're being drawn into. And we need to decide where the city role is in those things. Is it financial? Is it trying to pull people together to problem solve? What is our role on some of these issues? And I think that's what the strategic planning is going to be good for, saying this is our core mission here. It needs to, for our spending and for our staff to be involved, we really want to see it tie to things that produce these kind of results. That will be a good guidebook in the future for the city.
And we can have those discussions, you know, going forward into the new year. I'm sure we can spend some time on those things.
I think you'll hear a lot more of that, because as resources get tighter, Mike, we have to make sure that we can look at the budget, we can look at the CIP and say, these are meeting what we believe to be our core functions.
All right. Steve, as always, thank you for being here on our Council Preview program.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you for watching. Again, the next meeting of the Marshfield Common Council is on Tuesday. The date is November 10th, as always, at 7 p.m. at City Hall Plaza downtown. For Steve Barg, I'm your host, Mike Warren. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time here on Council Preview.